well, I want to welcome up our great panel to kick us off for the day. We have coming up here Mark Moore, Fabian Nestman, and Francois Chopard. Welcome up.
So, good morning, everyone. We have the difficult challenge to start the day and to warm up the room for the next session. We're going to talk about a not so futuristic subject anymore, but we're going to try in these 25 minutes to explain you what's going on in that field of aerial mobility. LA CoMotion is about mobility. We are starting to address the subject of mobility through the air, and it's quite a challenging subject, especially in LA. So we're going to have Mark from Uber Elevate and Fabi from Volocopter, who are going to share their vision, their thoughts with us, and try to enter into more details and explain you what's going on and what should happen in the coming years. Mark, do you want to start with a couple of minutes explaining what Uber Elevate is doing and what's your vision on the subject?
Sure. Can we cue the videos, and we'll just run those in the background as we give a quick introduction. There we go. So here's a video, kind of a day in the life of what we imagine at Uber Elevate. And that is that in cities such as Los Angeles, as soon as 2023, you're going to be able to have a new choice in how you get around highly congested cities that are facing gridlock. So here you can see a person being able to access what we call a skyport, which is a set of different nodes across a city that are connected through these new type of vehicles, such as Volocopter is building. And with these vehicles, you can essentially dash above traffic at 150 miles per hour and be able to get across town, and instead of an hour and 20 minutes, it's a 10-minute flight. So the idea is that this helps to connect us and to keep cities very, very productive. And what's really exciting about these vehicles as you fly over all that congestion is they're not helicopters. Actually, cue that noise so you can hear that airplane. These new type of vehicles are incredibly quiet. They're designed with redundancy so that they're ultra safe. So it is completely different than aircraft or helicopters today. And I know because I spent 32 years at NASA developing this technology and getting it ready for this next generation of vehicles. And with that, maybe I can turn it over to talk about one of the vehicles.
Sure, thank you. So, Victoria and team, if you want to switch. So we, in the last 24 hours here at LA CoMotion, we've talked about mobility mostly, on the ground. But at the end of the day, all innovation that's coming there is really exciting. At the end of the day, autonomous vehicles are not going to solve traffic jams necessarily. If we're looking at the situation that LA is in today, it's fairly frustrating at times, as you just said, and as Heather said earlier as well. So the reason to go up in the sky is to kind of free up time here. And Mark just alluded to where it's going to go. Maybe just a little peek back in time where it came from. This is the humble beginnings of the Volocopter. That was really a model, a flying yoga ball to show how distributed electrical propulsion works, that it works. And that since then has gathered millions of views on YouTube, but it is more importantly formed the base of the vessel that we're producing today. on the next video, that would come up, we would be seeing the aircraft as it is today, nearly. So what you'll see here already is what Mark said, multiple redundancy. The vessel that we're manufacturing and that we have designed has 18 propellers fueled by 9 batteries, so it's fully electrical. It's multiple redundancies. Even if there's a propeller that's not working, you can still stay up in the air. And most importantly, these aircraft are, compared to helicopters, super unnoisy. The biggest impediment to having urban aerial transportation is really noise, because no one wants to have a helicopter landing next to them, especially regularly. With that, hopefully we'll be able to have a noise level, and we're pretty confident to have that, that you won't really notice in an urban environment, especially if the ports and the hubs that those things would start from are a little elevated. It would just blend in with the noise level of the city. Yeah, I don't think we're getting the next video, but it's crashed. Okay. So obviously, will never happen with the vehicles. The video, we didn't build in multiple redundancies with the videos. So this is one of our founders, 150 kilo payload up in the air. And that's the Volocopter pretty much as it is today. So this is real, right? This is not a simulation. It's not a concept that's been flying. This is us flying in Dubai last year over the city, sand, sea, so a complex environment at the request of the sheikh there. And that was really exciting because we showed that, yes, you can fly in an urban environment at 40 degrees Celsius, whatever that is in Fahrenheit.
So, Mark, Fabien, we are in 2018. What is the current performance of these vehicles in terms of payload, distance, speed? And what's your target, both in terms what do you want to achieve and at what time?
So the amazing thing is that there's over 100 different types of vehicles in development right now using this new technology of distributed electric propulsion. So we're very much in a new Wright brothers era, where nobody knows exactly what the vehicle should look like to take advantage of this new technology. So everybody's trying different things, and it's kind of like the genetic algorithm at work, quickly getting to the best possible configurations. So we're already seeing many of the aircraft tests flown. Most of them are being done very privately, and some go as fast as 200 miles per hour. But what's really neat is the majority of them that I'm seeing are exactly as Fabien said, which are ultra quiet. They are on the order of 15 to 20 decibels quieter than the quietest helicopter. So we're going to see, I think, many, 10 to 20 of these vehicles come out in the public by 2020. We'll then be able to make commitments at Uber to be purchasing these aircraft so that by 2023 they can be certified by the FAA and EASA to go into commercial use. We've announced the first 2 cities of Dallas and Los Angeles as the first 2 cities, Los Angeles in particular, because you have crazy gridlock here, and we really need this.
So it's, speaking to our vessel specifically, the Volocopter that you've seen here has been designed specifically with the aim for urban transport, right? So inner city transportation. It's not for city to city, not for long haul flights. That's why you won't see any wings, you won't see any tilting, any ducts, anything. We try to keep it as simple as possible, a really simple object. That one will be able to fly and is able to fly around 30 minutes or 30 kilometers at 100 kilometers per hour. Obviously, everybody would love to have more, autonomy, more space, more everything. Batteries today are a very limiting factor. But the idea with a volocopter is to get something certified really quickly. We're in the process of EASA certification, so that we can showcase that, right? I think it's really important to show people what an air taxi looks like, how it sounds, what it feels like, to take away any fear that there may be.
I like what you said, Mark, about the Wright brothers. At the first Uber Elevate conference, about a year and a half ago in Dallas, there was just a couple of players, a few big corporates, a few startups already well funded, and a year later, in LA, we were able to count at least 80 different startups, having Joby Aviation raising 100 million, Lilium having raised 100 million, Volocopter has raised...
Not 100 million yet.
No, but a large amount of money and enough to bring that vehicle to certification. The Wright brothers, their first public flight was in France in 1908. A year later, we were counting more than 15 manufacturers outside Paris building planes. So we are just trying to show you that we are at a turning point of a new way of doing aviation and a new way of doing mobility.
Well, the neat thing about this is it's not just about the technology being ready for this, but it's that there's this convergence of many different technology, whether that's 5G networks that we'll be able to take advantage of for the communications on these vehicles, because they fly at low altitudes of about 1,500 feet, but it's also about new business models being ready to insert itself to provide this. Because, I mean, if one individual was jumping into one of these vehicles, it would be very inefficient and very expensive. But just in the last 5 years, ride sharing has matured so that today we offer Pool or Pool Express, where you share your ride with 3 or 4 other people. Now, 5 years ago, it would have been thought insane to jump into a stranger's car with 4 other strangers, but somehow, just in 5 years, we've gotten used to that. And ride sharing is such an effective business model to be able to achieve the great costs and the productivity and the throughput so that these actually are a responsible transportation solution.
Yeah, you're right. What Uber has brought to the table is a real business case. What we used to have in the past, we are talking about flying cars, but none of them really succeed because there was not enough of a business case, so not enough money being able to be raised, and so not serious developments.
And the good thing, if you look around at all those startups that are venturing into building and designing air taxis and operating them, none of them have taken the approach of manufacturing something for the elites, right? Everybody's thinking about, okay, this needs to have an impact on traffic. And even if that impact, I think it's probably improbable that, we'll take 50% of the traffic into the air, at least I couldn't think about that. But if we take 5, 6, 7% of the traffic up into the air, they'll free up, space on the highways.
But it is amazing how quickly things are happening, right? Because again, 5 years ago, we started as a black car service, which was expensive. But 5 years later, we're doing 10 million trips a day with Uber. And that's just 5 years later. So I think as you can imagine going 5 years out from now, this will be real. This will become part of your life to get above the gridlock that you experience every day.
And so, Mark, at Uber, have you done calculations, especially, let's talk about LA. How many flying vehicles would we need to get rid of that gridlock or that painful transportation on the road?
So the amazing thing about gridlock is that it's highly nonlinear. So if you can get rid of about 5% of the cars, you can get about a 15% savings in the congestion and the delay that exists in traffic. So just getting 5% of the cars off the road can have a significant impact. So we are designing this system from day one not to be for the elite, but to be a highly scalable system. in terms of the infrastructure required, which will be highly distributed set of skyports, to the airspace, which will be dynamic skylane networks, all of the different pieces so that we can transport, even in the next 10 years, hundreds of thousands of people a day. And as we look beyond 2030 and are able to achieve autonomous aircraft, because in the beginning we'll start with pilots until we prove them safe, we see the future being able to go to millions of trips per day for a city such as Los Angeles. And again, these are going to be quiet. These are going to be ultra safe. You won't even see them or hear them flying above you. So don't imagine that Star Wars image where there's just like high density starships flying over your head. This really will be a scalable system that can serve the public needs.
And go ahead.
Just on one detail, for instance, helicopters today are really expensive, right? And they have lots of moving parts, which requires lots of maintenance, and maintenance is expensive. With the air taxis that we're building today, you have very few moving parts. You literally only have the propellers that are moving because they're all electrical, or mostly all electrical, and that drives down the cost of the vehicle, drives down the cost of maintenance, and thus, makes it much more affordable and much more, probable that you'll have costs that are, like taxi costs or Uber costs.
At the last Uber Elevate conference, Eric Gassetti was saying the FAA is making this vehicle fly, but it's the city that will make them land. In the city of LA, I'm a pilot, and so I can land pretty much where I want. There's 30 different airports. There's more than 300 registered helipad. Most of them are not in use anymore, but it's a great playground. Mark, how do you see Uber Elevate in LA and then Volocopter?
So this is one of the great things. As you said, the FAA is responsible for ensuring these vehicles can fly safely and have separation and are designed in a way to be just incredible safe. But it is wonderful that there's many voices in bringing this about. And the local voices are very important. So before we can put a skyport in any specific neighborhood and conduct operations, the locality is going to have a voice in approving these locations. And again, we're not going to put these indiscriminately anywhere. We won't put them in residential neighborhoods. They'll tend to be located close to highways because this is an intramodal, this is a multimodal transportation solution. We'll put them in locations where there tends to be high background noise anyway and in elevated structures. So the first skyports will be essentially the top deck of an elevated parking garage, which we can convert for use. But very much the localities are going to have a voice, and we think that's wonderful because that absolutely forces any entry to come into this and do so in a responsible, community-friendly way. That is with ultra-low noise vehicles as well as ultra-low emissions. In fact, we are committed to these being all electric so that they have no local emissions and can force that future grid to evolve quickly using renewable energy solutions.
I mean, pretty much what Mark says. I'd add or expand on the fact that this will be integrated with all other mobility options that you see, and there's plenty outside. And I love the fact that I can take scooters and bikes these days. Actually, my personal car usage has gone down dramatically whenever the sun is out, at least, since scooters and bikes have been made available to me when I travel. And so the working with cities and working with the citizens to make the mobility chain and the mobility array work and function for them is obviously crucial. And I think that's what we're seeing all around. We're really trying to work with the people to build something that makes a lot of sense and that at the end of the day will replace car ownership.
Actually, if I can jump in, yeah, we see the future where you have these Skyport nodes distributed all across LA, and the city becomes essentially more walkable around each one of these nodes, but they're interconnected. And what's cool about the way the system is developing is that it's not a pathway-based system, it's a node-based system. So if we have 50 Skyports and add one more Skyport, we get 50 new routes. While if you have a subway and you add one more subway stop, you just get one more subway stop. So this node-based transportation is kind of the way to get to high efficiency. And I know your investment fund is investing in a lot of startups in this area, and it's so cool how so many small new entrants, new companies are coming in to contribute to this ecosystem development.
And maybe re-expanding, also thinking about cost, right? If you want to expand a subway line, you're talking billions from the get-go, no matter how long, no matter how far. If you're talking about expanding, adding another lane to a highway, if that's even possible, because I don't think that's possible in LA. You're talking billions again. Adding a skyport or a hub or however you want to call it, that's going to be a comparatively low amount for the mobility that you'll get out of it. So that's really interesting, I think, from an investment perspective as well.
And that type of approach already exists in Sao Paulo. We are talking about it. Can you talk more? Maybe describe a little bit more longer, and then how could we apply that to LA?
Sure. So if you have the privilege or joy of going to Sao Paulo, there's a service there, possibly actually a competitor, where you can from the airport you'll take a helicopter onto your hotel. Just go down with the elevator, check into your hotel, and go back up to your room. You'll feel like a superstar. And that cost me, I did that a couple of weeks ago, and that cost me €65 or $80. That's nothing. I mean, it's nothing if you compare it to the price that the Uber or the taxi would have been. It's the same price, just that it took 12 minutes instead of 120 minutes. So there's a huge value there.
And that system exists. There's been at least monoturbine are able to fly above Sao Paulo for a very long time. Sao Paulo is historically the second largest fleet of helicopters. There's more than 400 of them. And at the beginning, that regulation was made because for security reason. The city was so unsafe that for the wealthy people, they wanted to develop the ability to fly to their home, to their building or office quicker and safer. And so it started with the regulations. LA, I still have the feeling that we can fly pretty easily in the airspace. Here, what we say is that we are not just talking about the vehicle, but we need to address the certification of this vehicle, the pilots, and then where we're going to land. Have you started to engage discussion with these major cities, and what's the status?
Yeah, and certainly with Los Angeles, because we see it as kind of the perfect nexus of incubation for this market, where you are blessed with incredible weather, where if we tried to start in Detroit, maybe a little bit more difficult there. So it's great to be able to start where all the conditions are right for the genesis of this new urban air mobility market. But it is very much about bringing together the infrastructure partners, the aviation leasing companies, the insurance companies, the cities and the planners all need to come together, because this is really going to reshape cities. It's going to give us a lot more choices on where we live, where we work, and how we get around. And I think, if you can imagine 30 years out, transportation is going to be very, very different in the future, and we're really privileged to work in this new technology age where you can not just talk about doing things, but actually do them that people have been talking about for 100 years and wanting.
So I worked for Uber before joining Volocopter, and I worked in public affairs there, and the experience I made in Europe was that talking to regulators was challenging, I'm going to say. The discussions that I've been having now on urban air taxi services are mind-blowingly positive and optimistic and open, right? So for a city like LA, obviously the city or whoever owns the grounds own the grounds, but starting at 200 feet, the FAA owns the city, right? Anything above 200 feet, you'll need the FAA to buy in, even if you're building a skyscraper. So it'll take the FAA in the US, it'll take the city to work with, and both, the city and the FAA seem really open, really wanting to move things. The speech of Mayor Garcetti yesterday was, I found, very inspiring, quite frankly, very open. And just one more comment about LA. When we sat down at Volocopter, we looked at most cities around the world, and then we applied, data sets to all the cities. And no matter how we dissected this list, LA always came out on top.
And maybe one last question to, to close the debate. We've been talking a lot here about autonomous vehicle, but mostly autonomous vehicle on the ground. Do you think that we're going to see autonomous flying vehicle first, or autonomous car first in LA or elsewhere?
Well, we're doing autonomous cars on the ground. Many companies are doing so. They're well along, but they operate in a very, very cluttered environment where you have to have instant reaction time. If it's a deer or a child, that's jumping out in the street, it's a very, very difficult problem because of the complexity of the environment. It's actually way easier to do that up in the sky because there's nothing up there but other vehicles. And all of them are essentially broadcasting a signal where they are, how fast they're going, what their trajectory is. So it's a great question, which will happen first. We firmly believe that we'll start in 2023 with piloted vehicles with a man or a woman as the pilot in command of those vehicles. And then over the next 5 years, from 2023 to 2028, we'll build up 100 million trips and be able to prove that the software in the background is ready to take command of the vehicle and have statistical proof of that. So we see 2028 as the likely time frame when autonomous aircraft will be able to really take us to scale with this solution, because there aren't enough pilots to do this across 50 different cities with 1,000 aircraft per city.
Yeah, I mean, I'm aligned with that, and there is a pilot shortage today, right? So if we're talking about bringing more things in the air, then that'll be a problem.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.